Welcome to the Cloak and Dagger podcast. On this podcast, we'll be talking about freeform show Cloak and Dagger. Here are your hosts, Kat and Butch.
Hello, Cloak and Dagger fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Cloak and Dagger podcast. My name is Kat, and I am here as always with my co-host Butch.
Hello, everyone.
And we are here this week discussing and recapping episode 6, Funhouse Mirrors. What were your overall thoughts on this episode for this week, Butch?
Obviously, I really liked it. We have the parallel theme going on really long with this episode, as our two lead stars have like their cute little side missions to do on their own, and a lot of like I said, parallelism going on, and that was really fun. And it's a perfect thing to do with this show, of course. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I liked the overarching storyline of here's New Orleans, and it's a city that constantly gets hit by trouble and disaster, but everybody keeps bouncing back. And we saw that theme running through our kind of small overarching storyline with Evita and her aunt Clarice, and then with Tandy and Ty's separate storylines that, of course, intermingled together. So this was a cool episode, again, tying everything together even though they're living their separate lives.
Yep.
Alrighty, so we're going to dive into our recap, but first we're going to take a break to hear from one of our sister podcasts.
Hey there, Cloak and Dagger fans. We are Abel, Andrew, and Adam from the Shadowhunters podcast.
If you're a fan of Shadowhunters, come and discuss the show with us every week. And during the hiatus, listen to our original content, including episode rankings, rip it or ship it, and character best and worst moments.
And if you haven't heard of Malik, you are truly not living your best life.
Check us out everywhere where podcasts are located. And thank you guys for listening. Enjoy your show.
All right, we're back. So let's jump into our recap of, again, episode 6, Funhouse Mirrors. So we start out right away with a scene with Evita and her aunt Clarice, and they're getting ready for a reading. And we find out that the reading is not for anybody in particular, but her aunt is saying that it's a reading for the city. So we kind of get that overview again of the dolls that she has on her mantle that we talked about in, I believe, episode 4 it was. So that's some kind of connection to the power of the city, or to whatever the power is that we're learning about that's kind of behind Cloak and Dagger as we know them. So we get a small glimpse into those dolls. What did you think of that scene?
Well, again, we have a conversation framing the whole episode. You know, we check in throughout the episode with these two, with Evita and her auntie, and they give a lot of the exposition for this episode. They clear up a lot of some of the things that I think some people were maybe confused about. They clarify a lot of they confirm some theories that we've been talking about for a few weeks now, so that was good to hear. And just in general, it's good to see Evita's auntie back. It's been a few episodes since we saw her, and I just really love. I mean, Evita's always great, of course, and it's cool that she gets to play off her auntie, and who has like this kind of mirrors her attitude in a way. Like she has a sense of maybe urgency or importance to the story that is very interesting, and as of right now it's still not completely resolved. But I think we have a clear idea of what role she's going to play moving forward.
Yeah, I like the mysticism that she brings to the show with the voodoo aspects and the card readings that she's doing. So that was a cool like break, an overall arching theme into more about who Ty and Tandy are as Cloak and Dagger, and what that could have meant to the city in the past. So we had that scene, and then we jumped right into Ty, who's back in Dwayne's factory, and he's kind of there fishing for a job, and, you know, job in quotes, because he's looking for the secret job. And Dwayne's kind of like, yeah, you know, blowing him off. You know, he doesn't want to give away too much about what's actually going on in his factory. And I think that he also feels that sense of responsibility of this is my friend's little brother. And, you know, in some way I still have to shield him from this sort of life. So we also see the scene of Ty, one of Dwayne's dealers getting his supply from Dwayne and then grabbing that backpack. And Ty knows, okay, this is the guy I have to follow. Any thoughts on that scene?
Just want to. I think Dwayne's runner's name that is Kev, but I'm pretty sure it is. Actually, I had to like dig a little deep into the IMDb's.
Okay.
But played by a guy named Tanner Ellis, and yeah, his name is Kev. And yeah, we're gonna see more of Dwayne in this episode. I did not expect this much Dwayne, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff happens to him, and we'll get to it.
Yeah, so that's our kind of first look into, you know, what Ty really knows about Dwayne now after he saw that scene with Detective Connors last week. So we can see that the Ty is, you know, he's not running away from this like Tandy might in any given situation, but he is facing this head on. So that is his first look into Dwayne's business dealings with Kev. So I'm going to go with Kev. I'm going to call him Kev now.
Yeah, let's go with Kev.
Then we pan over to a scene with Mina. So we get we had a really good episode this week with Mina Hess, and we got to learn a lot more about her and love her character. She was amazing, and Ally Mackey and Olivia Holt are wonderful together. So I was super excited to see them, you know, kind of take this episode and run with it. But we see Mina is speaking quickly in French on the phone, angrily to someone. I don't know what she was talking about because I don't speak French. But Tandy comes up, and Tandy's wearing glasses, so we know that, you know, Tandy's in disguise. So she comes up to Mina and claims her name is Liz and that she's an intern and she was assigned by some teacher, and gives a believable story to Mina that, you know, I'm your intern and I'm working with you now. And Mina's kind of like, I'm not too sure about all this, so, you know, I don't need to work with anybody. But Tandy, being Tandy, knows how to play the situation cool and really talks her way into being Mina's intern in the guise of finding out more information about her father, Ivan Hess.
Right. Again, we're getting, even though we met Mina a little bit in the last episode, we're sort of reintroduced to her again. She has a pretty cool entrance sequence for this episode, where like she comes out of the Roxxon building, and she's dressed in like a traditional business attire, and she's like taking the clothes off, and she's speaking in French, and you see her like her like off-road vehicles like full of like mud and dirt, and she's, you know, like taking off her clothes, and she's putting on her, so you see her attitude that she's kind of halfway into that corporate world, but she's also, we're getting this side of her that's an environmentalist, kind of rugged, that kind of introduction to the character. And on the side note, I found out that the streaming service that I use, they actually offer like subtitles. So I turned on the subtitles just in case. Yeah, just in case she was saying anything important to the story, and you don't have to worry about it too much. She was just talking to some business person about like setups on some other project, I think. So it's not a big deal.
Okay. All right. That was smart to think of the captions. I didn't think about doing that. I'll have to do that next time if that comes up. If Mina brings her amazing talents in again in the next episode, so we'll see how that goes. But this scene just made me laugh because, I mean, Tandy can really just con anybody. She just and you're thinking like, you know, that she and Mina had met before, that Mina had talked with Tandy at the party. So at that point I was like, what are they going for here with the glasses? Like, are they trying to like give her a super disguise, like and, you know,
doing the The old
you
Clark
won't
Kent
recognize
thing with the
her. Yeah,
glasses.
exactly. You know,
Yeah.
is Mina not going to recognize her? Or Mina didn't really know who she was talking to at the party anyway, so, you know, she was
Yeah.
able to go with, I'm Liz the intern, so we end that scene with Mina kind of telling her to go buy a whole bunch of gear, basically saying, we're going to go play in the mud, so go get prepared, and then if you come back, we'll talk about the internship. So then that pans over to a scene with Detective O'Reilly, and she comes into the police station, and I had to rewind this part because I wasn't sure that that was her at first, but she's like 90s goth punk, like clubbed out, coming into the police station mad like she was undercover. Am I correct in saying that that was her in that scene when she came into the police station?
I am now not sure, because what I thought was that. Oh, okay, so I might be completely wrong. I thought the girl walking out was like one of the people that she was investigating. But now that you mention it, because I didn't really get a good look at her face, so maybe that was her. Maybe she was undercover.
Maybe
we'll find out.
See, like
Yeah.
I still don't know. Like, was that her and she was going undercover because she had all those pictures that she was looking through on her phone? So did she like go clubbing and go undercover, and that was what she decided to wear, which really wasn't working out for her? But you know, did
You
she
might
go
be right.
undercover and get those pictures, or was she interrogating somebody who then left the police station angry? Yeah, I don't know. So I'm torn. Guys, if you're listening and you know the answer, please let us know, because I still don't know. It didn't like 100% look like her to me, but then I didn't know if that's what she was going for, is like going like undercover.
She's that good.
Scene, trying to take pictures with her camera phone. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
she's looking through, and then I was like, did she make a change really quick? Because then she was in her normal cop clothes when Officer Fuchs came in to talk to her, or
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, either way, she has these pictures on her phone from kind of undercover drug dealing. So she's still well into this, kind of getting to know who Detective Connors is, and you know, whether he's a good cop or a bad cop. And Officer Fuchs comes in and tells her, you know, you need to kind of back away from this. This is more dangerous than you think. It is, you know, basically that she's playing with fire and that she needs to be careful. And she looks at him and kind of blows him off, like, you know, thanks for the warning, but this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get Detective Connors whichever way I have to, and I'm gonna keep rolling with this.
Right.
So at least she's looking out for her.
Just quickly, there's a lot of oil talk in this episode, and I like that they kind of preface that with Officer Fuchs saying that Connors is flammable, like don't play with fire, and it's like, ooh, that's gonna come into play later with other things. So that was pretty. That was a good job of that the writers did, and also I think it's thanks, and I think it's cool that, or interesting that we don't know yet about Officer Fuchs. Do you think so? Obviously, he like cares for Detective O'Reilly. Like last week, I was thinking, is he part of the big conspiracy with Connors? Because obviously he knows that there's something going on with that guy. So I don't know. Like it's sort of the same thing with some other characters, supporting characters. Where like, do they have the best interests of our main characters at heart, or are they like part of are they going to turn into like villains? And right now, I don't know yet with Officer Fuchs, so maybe we'll see.
Yeah. I do like how the writers kind of played creatively with his name. Because we were kind of introduced to him playing around with Bridget. You know, they were having a good time in the back of the police car, and then obviously you can interpret different pronunciations of his name. So kudos to the writers for that clever naming of Officer Fuchs. But I don't know. I feel like I can trust him at this point, because it does seem like he cares for Detective O'Reilly in some fashion.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because he cares about her or because he doesn't like Detective Connors, but nobody at the precinct has, you know, the guts really to go after Detective Connors because he is so protected.
Right.
And especially with what he's involved in, they have to all have an inkling of the drug business that Detective Connors has going on, but obviously none of them are going at him because they're kind of just keeping the peace. And that was kind of something that they talked about last episode, is that, you know, there's been this drug peace through the city through the years, and Detective O'Reilly's like, yeah, but why? So he's kind of warning her, like, let's not get too close to this. This could really mean that things are going to explode. But obviously she doesn't heed his warning. So we'll see how that goes. I hope he's not another casualty, because I do like him, like, as a character more than just like a write-off character. So I hope he doesn't go the way of poor Greg.
Oh God.
Yes. So then we go from that scene into Ty following Kev. So to Dwayne's dealer, Kev. And he's following him, and Ty is not like super sneaky at following people, so he's caught.
Terrible, man.
Yeah. So he gets caught right away, and Kev pulls a gun on him and basically scares the crap out of Ty. So, you know, that was kind of the end of that.
He sneaks around like, you know, kids play at sneaking around, like when you're at like next to a wall, you like lean your back against it and you're like peeking out. He sneaks around like a 4-year-old basically. Right. And we saw what happened, and even with what he tried to do with Dwayne earlier, like he tells Tandy later that he tried to con Dwayne. Like, he's bad at this stuff, which is actually, you know, in line with the character. Like, he's just a normal kid,
right? And
he doesn't know. Obviously, this is his first time doing these things, and he gets caught. And I'm glad that that Kev could have like shot him or something, and that was really he got off lucky.
He really did. You know, so Ty kind of is like, well, I got caught. He scared me. I'm kind of done with this. But he knows that he can't be done with this, so he's like, who do I go to for advice? My good friend Tandy, who's really good at this kind of thing. So we come back from a commercial break. We come back from a commercial break, and we have a little scene, another little scene with Evita and Aunt Clarice. And then they're starting to talk about how New Orleans is kind of stuck in this cycle of destruction and rebirth. So disasters happen, and Evita's kind of saying, like, you know, like, do you mean like hurricanes? And her aunt says, you know, lots of different things, not just hurricanes. So we kind of get that history to go along with the dolls, that, you know, New Orleans goes through this build up, something really bad happens, and the pairings of the dolls on the mantle has something to do with how New Orleans comes out of it. So she does have that impending doom look on her face, that disaster is coming, and that she needs to kind of try to figure out like where it's coming from and when it's coming.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got that overarching scene, and then we go back into Ty, and he's waiting for Tandy in the church because he knows he messed up and he needs some advice. So it was a really cute scene of him just like waiting in the church, and Tandy comes in and she has all of her gear that she went and got from somewhere with money that she got from somewhere. So she's got her mud bogging gear to continue her con with Mina. But I like this scene because they were kind of just like checking in with each other, like, hey, how's your thing going? How's your thing going?
Exactly.
So Tandy kind of tries to give Ty advice, you know, did you try to con him? And he's like, yeah, no, that didn't really work. And she tells him eventually to use his nightmares, you know, use his nightmare powers against him. She's like, I got my hope powers and I use those in my cons, and should you get information from people, why couldn't you do the same thing? So I think that that's something that Ty didn't really necessarily think about, that his power that seems probably scary and not a good power could actually be used to further along his investigation into Detective Connors.
Exactly. I really like I mean, obviously she's further along in her control of her powers at this point, and I like that little bit where she whips out the light dagger and then uses it to what do you call this, to open up her bag of goods.
Just like,
Like
oh, I
it's
need a
so
knife. Let me
casual.
take this out.
Yeah, and again, it shows she's number one, she's got perfect control over it right now,
Mhm.
and two, she does not. I don't know. There's something about the way she did it, like she doesn't care, which fits in line with
Right.
what she was doing last week. She just whips it out, doesn't care, uses it for whatever, and yeah, when it comes to this little bit of them checking up with each other, it keeps that theme of sort of showing how they're influencing each other.
Yeah.
That they're pushing each other or giving ideas and suggestions, and even, I mean, Tandy, I guess, gave the practical advice to Tyrone with what to do. Like, you can take over Kev's role or whatever. The idea she gave him, and meanwhile he's sort of telling her to. I think he was mentioning like he planted the seed of what we'll see later with Tandy when she there's an opportunity for her to use her powers, but she doesn't. And I think that comes a little bit from Ty's influence in this scene. Like, don't be too reckless, don't be too cavalier about using your powers. So I like that we show that relationship developing, and then they go off and do their own thing, and that's really fun.
Yeah, it showed that, like, they've had their differences, obviously, and they don't really know who each other is, but they obviously have each other's back. And I really liked that about that scene. And
yeah.
What did Tandy say when Ty, Ty's kind of asking her, like, how her thing's going, and she's saying that, she's the new intern for Roxanne, working with Mina, and he says something like, Mina's her friend, and she's like, she's not my friend, she's my mark. And
yeah.
I kind of think that line in particular, going through the episode, you see that kind of really changes for Tandy, and that we see this kind of like hardened side of Tandy. Like, I'm overall just going into this as a con, I'm not going to get emotionally invested in anything, and then we see that kind of falls to the side when she finds out kind of more about who Mina really is.
Yeah.
So we leave that scene, and we're going to Tandy with all of her gear, and she's meeting Mina at what looks like an abandoned amusement park, which is where I'm guessing that Funhouse Mirror's title of the episode kind of comes into play. And she meets Mina at what looks like, she's living in an old building there, but she's got her setup going on there where she has some equipment that she's working with. She has, most importantly, and what they point out, is a replica of the oil rig that exploded. And we find Mina making cookies. So that was kind of odd. Like, they show her right away when she's baking, and I wasn't really sure where that was going. I didn't know if she was making something for like some animal that they were going to go look at or something like that, but she was legitimately just baking cookies, and we find out why later. But Tandy is, kind of like confused as to what's going on, but we get this great, scene of really seeing Mina and kind of getting to know a little bit more about her. Like, she's saying that it was hard to get the oven temperature right, so she just recalibrated her thermometer on her oven. So she just like took control of that situation, and Tandy's kind of doing a little snooping as she's inside her place there.
Right, and just again, because she's conning her, and I just love the line when Mina tells Tandy to come up and let's science or whatever, and Tandy's like, okie dokie, and she like goes up the steps. It's like she's definitely in her role.
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah, she's starting her con.
Yes. So she's starting to fish for information, and you could see how like Tandy's pretty good at fishing for information. She just asks small questions over observations that she can see. So she's saying, oh, you have a lot of blueprints here. She's kind of trying to figure that out, and then obviously that oil rig, and that she's seeing that in the place, so you can't really question as to why she's asking that at this point. She's really just trying to do her information gathering.
Yes. So far, so good for her.
Yes. So then we pan away to a short scene of Ty again stalking Kev the dealer. So he's doing a little bit better this time in his stalking skill. And then we go right back over to O'Reilly and Connors. So now they're talking, and they're, he's kind of saying, what's going on, and he's trying to figure out what she's doing, because he obviously knows that she's still investigating this. So he was kind of trying to tell Dwayne last episode, don't worry about it. This is, I'm going to take care of this. This officer is not going to be poking around anymore. Well, she's still poking around. So he knows that he has to take care of this. And, she's kind of talking to Connors like, I've been interrogating people and none of them know, like the guy at the top, they don't really know what's going on. What do you think about that? And he says to her, maybe he's just smart. So they're kind of trying to get a feel out for one another about like how much each other knows.
Right.
And O'Reilly starts showing her the surveillance, starts showing him the surveillance picture. So that kind of, I don't know where she was going with that. If she was still trying to gain his trust, but I think that at that point she was kind of showing him too much. But then he says, I'm gonna go out with you tonight. Let's go do this. And you can see Officer Fuchs in the background, like giving her the side eye, like, really, what are you doing? I tried to warn you about this. And she looks back at him and is like, I don't care. I'm following this to the end, no matter what. So what do you think about that scene with sneaky Detective Connors?
I think it's interesting because in a way with O'Reilly, she's also doing what Tandy and Tyrone are doing, in the sense that she's sort of playing a part, trying to get her guy, which is Connors, and so she's there's that part of like, oh, she also has her own mission. It's not just our two leads, so she's almost like that third lead. And just a quick thing, I don't know how tall Emma Lahana is, but either she's really small or Connors is like a giant, because he's like a full maybe foot like towering over her in this scene. So he's pretty tall, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm not sure. JD Evermore. We'll have to check that.
Yeah.
But I just, you just really still continue to get that feeling from Connors, and especially from what we know of what is really going on, that he's bad, but he's smart about it, and obviously he has to be, because he's gotten this far with his drug ring and he's kept it under wraps for so long, and now he has this cop who's kind of threatening him, and he doesn't just go right out and try to put a hit on her or anything, or try to go through the chain and like stop her from what she's doing. He's like, I'm going to go with her and take her with me and like really kind of find out what's going on here. And it's under the guise of, oh, I'm going to talk to my guy. So like, I have this informant, that I talk to, and he's like, maybe I can help you out. And you're like, as an audience, we know what he's really doing, but you can see how that, saying that and having that background of being a vice cop, well, it would make sense that he has a guy, an informant within the ring. So he's playing what he can because he's smart. And, that was the comment he made, that maybe he's just a smart guy. And so far he has been playing it smart.
Right. Surviving.
Yes. So after we get our scene of Officer Fuchs sadly looking off at O'Reilly, knowing that she's going to go do what she's going to do, we come back to another scene with Evita and her aunt. And her aunt is saying, we really need to understand the past so that we can have an understanding of the present, but then hopefully have an idea of what's coming in the future. And in this scene is where they use the term divine pairing. So her aunt is using that, this is the divine pairing. We know that Tyrone is one of them, and you see that 3D model of Ty on her mantle, but they don't know who the other person is. So at this point, we know that Evita knows what her aunt knows.
Yeah, and we're sort of what I got out of this scene is a sort of confirming the theory, or actually debunking the theory. One of the theories that I was thinking about, like maybe the aunt is like evil, and she's like setting up Evita to be like they know, like what we got out of here is that they have an idea of what the whole thing is about. Like you're trying to stop a some kind of catastrophe, but at the same time, these people they're they don't know exactly, like they don't have all the answers,
Right.
and they're not actively trying to set up Evita as the other half of the divine pairing as of this point. So that was really good to kind of a relief to see that Evita, she's not evil for sure.
Yeah.
She could be, like anything can happen. Like with the aunt, we don't know everything yet, but like you said, as of this scene, Evita knows what her aunt knows, and so far her aunt is all about stopping. Like they have good intentions. They're about stopping this catastrophe, and just trying to figure out who the other half of the divine pairing is. And we also got, I'm not sure if it was here or it was in the earlier scene between them, we got another reference to what do you call this, to energy building and energy being released. And they weren't obviously, they weren't talking about the stuff with Roxxon, but again, the writers are pointing towards foreshadowing what's going to happen with not just later in the episode, but later in the season, I think. With that line. So that was cool.
For sure. And we do get from this little scene that understanding that Evita's aunt knows that history of the divine pairing and knows that these have been two individuals throughout the history of the city who have kind of been there to protect the city or to help it, go from that disaster to rebirth stage. So we know that she knows about that. If anybody else knows about that, we're not sure at this point, but we know that Aunt Claire and Evita know at this point, and we know that they know Ty is one of them. So I don't know how they're gonna find out that Tandy is the other. Maybe we'll see in the next episode. But just in that little snippet of a scene that we had, that answered some really good plot questions for us that we had from episode 1. So that's
pretty much
good to see. Pan back to Tandy and Mina, and now they're in the swamp, and they are talking about Mina's dad, and they start talking about bees, and they kind of have this science-y dialogue about how bees, how they are going extinct, and that's something that the writers and directors of the show had tweeted out after the show was over, that this is an actual problem that we're facing right now. So it was kind of cool to bring that into this scene, but Mina was basically saying she used to see bees everywhere and now she's not really seeing them anymore, and she put Tandy to the test with what was it again, the colony collapse disorder theory. So that was something that Mina had written a thesis paper on, that Tandy obviously did her homework and followed up on. But we get this really good addition to the plot, and we kind of see this again with Ty, but that bees are kind of like the New Orleans of insects, because Mina gives this insight into bees, that they were around before the meteor hit with the dinosaurs and caused the mass extinction, and then bees came back. And they're kind of like a metaphor for New Orleans, that disaster does hit New Orleans, but New Orleans is resilient and New Orleans comes back. So we get that not just from Evita and her aunt, but now we're getting that from Tandy and Mina in a cool science-y kind of conversation there. And we get that New Orleans always comes back, but why? What is making New Orleans come back from these disasters? And I think that's what we're going to be finding out more about. But I thought this was like a cute look into more of Mina's character. She's not that corporate scientist. She's in the mud looking around. She knows her stuff, and I think that Tandy was kind of surprised by that.
Right. And the fact that, well, she will be surprised later on when we find out that they could have driven to
Yeah.
to where they're going, but instead, like, Mina's character is such that she'd rather like walk through swamps, like swamplands or whatever, the lake that they were going through, which didn't seem that easy to do.
Yeah.
And I like that. We'll find out later that because she kept giving this weird look. Mina kept giving Tandy like a sideways kind of look, and I noticed that even with the stills that they were releasing like in the weeks prior when they were talking about the character, and we will find out later that she's kind of getting a clue right at this point. Like, obviously Mina is obviously like a super smart character,
Yeah.
and even at this point she's already figuring out maybe Liz isn't all, or she's more than she's pretending to be. And I feel like that's why we're getting these kind of mischievous like looks from, or suspicious looks from Mina. And yeah, again, we're keeping in mind that and what we know about Tandy. At the same time, they're circling each other, trying to figure out like who is this person. They're both trying to dig for information, but at the same time, when they're getting to know each other, and Mina will say a line like, when you stop looking for something, that's when it disappears, something like that. And Tandy's like, oh, I'll keep looking for you. And I'm sure she's like relating that to her search for her dad, and
Yeah.
that's causing her to start, feeling like, okay, this Mina person's cool. Maybe she's not just a mark, like maybe, oh, okay, I like this person. And again, that'll come into play later on as this relationship develops.
Yeah, and you do get that sense that Mina is a really smart character and that she knows that there's something up. She's just kind of testing the waters, as it were, trying to dig into who this Liz, the intern, could possibly be, if she's telling the truth or not. So you do get that sense, but she still wants to, bring Tandy along and kind of see where this goes. So I just really like how the writers got, the point that New Orleans is a survivor city through a story of bees and science, and these two girls walking around in a mud bog. So it was really cool to see that scene. It was really, really well written
and well shot.
Yes, absolutely. So then we move on to another scene with Detective O'Reilly and Detective Connors, and they are driving. So you know that wherever they're going to end up is going to be nowhere good. But Detective Connors is trying to tell Detective O'Reilly that the key to thinking, the key to kind of getting into this drug ring is to think like them and to be able to predict what they're going to do. And you're kind of like sitting in the audience saying, well, yeah, you know how to do that because you're the mastermind behind all this and you've set all this up. So where they're driving and he's trying to give her advice, and then all of a sudden these two worlds are going to collide, and we see they stop right in front of where Kev, the guy that Ty is actively stalking still.
Yep.
And they stop right in front, and they jump out of the car, and they scare him, and Kev drops his bag. So he's, throws his stash. Detective O'Reilly thinks that she knows where it was, but that's where Ty happened to be hiding out. So Ty grabs the bag. Detective O'Reilly has no idea what's going on, but then, the chase ensues.
Right. Good job, Ty.
Yes. So way to grab the bag. Then we pan back to Tandy and Mina. And that was the part of the scene where Tandy's like, we really could have just driven here, and Mina's like, yeah, but I wanted to take this walk with you. And then they start talking more about what happened 8 years ago. So I think this was a really key scene. They're talking about how there was the explosion and why did it happen, and basically who was responsible. And we know that from what Mina is saying, that basically only Nathan Bowen and her dad, Ivan Hess, knew what they were really drilling for, and it wasn't oil. So it was something that was 10 times better than oil, but it was really, really hot, and they didn't have the oil rig couldn't handle it. So now, you pan back to that scene of little Tandy and her dad in the car, and he's trying to tell him, it's going to explode, it can't handle it, and now we know why. It's not because they were drilling for oil. So the explosion happened for a reason. The Roxxon was getting greedy with what they were drilling for. So then Mina kind of says, well, I'm fixing the system, and she wants to show Tandy the valve that she has put into place to help deal with the extra heat of whatever this, not oil, but oil-like substance that they're drilling for is. So she wanted to show her that, I took my dad's work and I went with it. But she also has these really nice things to say about Nathan Bowen. And I don't know at that point if she knew that Tandy was his daughter, but I think that she still just has this overarching respect for Nathan Bowen because he was so smart and he was such a good scientist. But she says that her dad, Tandy says, I read that it was all Nathan Bowen's fault, what happened with the explosion. And Mina comes back with saying, my dad said that Nathan Bowen could never make a wrong calculation in his life. And I think that really got to Tandy, to hear that from somebody else, a confirmation that, it wasn't my dad's fault. So what do you think of that scene?
Yeah. Well, the way they shot that, she gives like a nuanced, Olivia gave like a nuanced smile.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like, oh, and you feel that happiness she has. Like, of course, you're gonna feel, maybe even not necessarily as like a family member who's like passed on or anything, but even hearing stuff about someone you care about who isn't there, like just offhand, like somebody just tells you, oh, like your father was really, or especially if that person doesn't know that the person they're talking about positively is your relative, like just hearing something good about someone and you're like, oh, okay, that feels good, and so we're getting that, and I feel like she's starting to show. This is where I think she's, even for someone like me just watching as an audience member, like, ooh, you're starting to poke and prod a little bit, Tandy, because what would some intern named Liz like know so much about like Nathan Bowen, or be so curious about the like, how would someone like that would even read about Nathan Bowen, right? Like, why would someone, like some random intern, be like, oh, I read this paper from years ago that this guy named Nathan Bowen, like, so I think it's she's kind of being a little bit starting to be obvious, I think. Showing her cards here, but that's, at the same time, there's a reason for it, and it's to indicate to us that she really cares for her dad, and this isn't a normal con for her. So she's maybe letting her guard down a little bit, and that, I think that explains perfectly why how Mina will be able to pick up on it later on. And again, we're also seeing how smart she is. We're talking about Tandy here, that I think she's starting to see. This is where she's starting to see parallels between Mina and herself. Because Mina's talking about her relationship with her father. Like, her dad is like this super smart scientist, and we're seeing how Mina's applying that to her life right now with Roxxon. And I'm sure she's starting to draw parallels with that. Tandy's like, oh, my dad's smart too, and maybe I could have had Mina's life, and that's really kind of heartbreaking, but at the same time makes me like happy, like seeing the potential that she could still have, I think, or seeing her realize that her own potential.
Right, and I like how you pointed out that this is not just a normal con for Tandy. In her normal cons, she doesn't have any emotional investment into what she's doing. It's, I need money,
right,
that's what I'm gonna get out of it. This is obviously so much more personal to her. She's talking about her dad. She's talking to somebody who knew about her dad, and you can see her kind of getting like you said, she's starting to show her cards a little bit. She's throwing caution a little more to the wind and trying to get the answers to the questions that she really wants, probably a little too soon. And especially with somebody like Mina, who's really smart and already has kind of her guard up with, Liz the intern. It could have gone badly for Tandy, but I'm glad that it didn't, because I really liked, as we got to know Mina Hess. I wasn't sure from the end of the last episode if I was going to like her. I wasn't sure what kind of character she was going to be, if she was going to be introduced as like evil scientist who works for Roxxon. But in this episode, we really got to know her, and I really, I like her, and the dynamic between Tandy and Mina was really good. And I think that, in that scene, Tandy was feeling it, like, this person could potentially be my ally. I'm going to relax a little bit. And I think that that's something that she doesn't do in a normal con. And then we get that more emotional side of Tandy. But that's when you're coming back to that line that Ty gave her in the church, when he's like, you're going to go see your friend, and she's saying, she's not my friend, she's my mark. It's like, it's kind of starting to get, a little bit more personal here, Tandy. You might need to step back a minute and reevaluate, that conversation that you had with Ty.
Right.
So, we do get a little bit more in depth about Nathan Bowen in that scene. Then we're going back over to Detective Connors, and he catches Kev, the drug dealer, and he starts beating him up, and he's threatening him, saying, go back to your boss, who we know is Dwayne, and tell him, I need to see him. This is not going to continue. I can't have this anymore. Things are getting too close. And then he kind of stops with the talk of when Detective O'Reilly comes up, but he's still beating him up. So he knows, that he has like a couple seconds to say what he needs to say from his, drug boss end of things, but he stops when she comes up. And then we know, from that scene as well, that Detective O'Reilly couldn't find the bag, so it's Ty who has the bag.
She noticed that when she comes up, like, Connors like throws one more punch at Kev, and she looks away. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to we're seeing again. If Tyrone and Tandy are supposed to represent the more extreme light and dark sides, O'Reilly is slotted firmly in the middle, in that she's a cop with good intentions, but at the same time, we saw last episode, she's willing to do things, some gray area things to get what she wants.
Yeah.
And even earlier when she was driving along with Connors in the car, Connors was like, you have to think like the person you're after, the criminals that you're after, and she's like, if you don't, the problem with that is that you could turn into them, and they're playing that up here again, like she's willing to look away while this guy is beating up on a suspect at this point. I like that little character beat to keep showing that she's not not exactly, she's dabbling with things, and she might end up turning into what she's trying to capture, which is like one of the bad guys.
That's an interesting theory, that she kind of flips sides because of the world that she's kind of immersing herself into.
Yeah, and you can see that can totally happen. Like she's denying being a junkie, but she's willing to do it. So it's totally plausible.
Yeah, and we see towards the end of the episode that Connors is kind of stuck with her going forward. So I guess we'll see what happens with that plot line there, but I like that theory of Detective O'Reilly kind of playing both sides of the fence there, and being that gray area of our black and white storyline.
Yeah.
Alright, so then we pan back over to Mina, and this is another great scene where, Mina and Tandy are looking at the valve, and Mina's like, I don't know what's wrong, it's overheating, and I designed it so that this wouldn't happen. And Tandy's got her blueprints out, and she's able to read these It involve scientific blueprints and say, hey, this valve was put in the wrong place. It's supposed to be, over there. And then we see corporate Roxxon guy Stan.
Yeah, you had one job, Stan.
Yes, one job, Stan, and you did it incorrectly. You got lazy and put the valve in the wrong place. So then, Mina gets badass on him and is saying, I'm going to make sure, what's his name? What's the Roxxon guy, the lead guy's name?
Scarborough.
Yeah, she's like,
Peter?
I'm going to make sure Peter Scarborough knows about this. I'm not going to take this from anybody. Stan Man, as you pan over to his car and he has his Stan Man plate. So you see that she doesn't, take any crap from anybody, and that she is a strong woman, a strong scientist, and somebody who's to be respected, because she really has the solution to make sure that, things don't blow up. So she's telling Stan, you better fix this, and then we have that awesome scene where Tandy kind of goes over to his Sandman vehicle and is looking around and then just jabs her stick into his tire and gives him a flat tire in the middle of the swampy heat. So that was classic Tandy, I'd say.
Absolutely. And just a quick thing, for the people who are looking for a Stan Lee cameo, I think this might be as good as we're gonna get, because that's his nickname. Stan Lee's comic book nickname has always been Stan the Man.
Yes.
And we get that here, and at the same time, it works perfectly for Stan's character, because you can totally see him as being the kind of guy who would get like a vanity plate, like a Stan Man vanity plate.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I'd add here is I like how they shot that scene with Tandy like stabbing the car in the sense that they didn't need to do any special effects, because I actually thought the knife came out when I watched it again. I'm like, oh no, they just put a little like flashlight from beneath Olivia to show that she did that. And I don't, and the way they shot the scene, the camera started to pan up, and I think that was with the sound effect of the hissing to indicate that the tire was starting to deflate.
I didn't catch that she did that with a dagger. I'm gonna have to watch that again. I thought she just did it with the stick she had in her hand.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think, okay, so I'm thinking, I guess I saw it. Yeah, there's like a little bit of light coming from that,
sense.
So I think,
why not?
Yeah, and that's totally her at this point. She's just whipping it out and doing stuff like that. So again, we're getting all the fun stuff is coming from Tandy, which is very much appreciated for this series.
Yeah. And they kept his license plate in picture when she was doing that. They didn't just pan over to her and have a straight shot of her making the tire flat. They kept it from the rear shot of having that license plate in picture. So that's a good catch. I bet that is their Stan Lee reference for Stan Man.
That's what we're gonna get.
Yep. I like it. Yeah, that was a good Tandy scene. So then we jump over to Ty, and the dealer finds Ty, and Ty has his backpack. And Ty, instead of freezing this time, he thinks about what Tandy told him to do: use your fear power and see what you can get out of this. So he touches him, and they go into the nightmare. And that was a pretty creepy nightmare of this
Holy
big monster thing coming after Kev, poor Kev. And it's these kids singing Tisket a Tasket, which is an old nursery rhyme about having something and then losing it. So that was pretty appropriate. But, you can see Kev trying to run away through that door, and Ty's like, we're staying here. So I guess, Ty or Kev just can't handle what, seeing the nightmare and then being in there. And that kind of speaks more to Ty's powers of what people feel like when they come out of that nightmare state of being there with him, because he just ran and left the backpack with Ty.
Yeah. Okay, so this scene, we actually saw a tiny snippet of this in one of the last what do you call them, like series previews before the first episode came out. I noticed like they shot the monster thing, and I'm like, is that going to be like a villain of the show? And it turns out it's just like this small bit, which is kind of sad because it looked creepy. even though we didn't see too much of it.
Yeah.
And again, you pointed it out, like he was actively stopping Kev from exiting the fear, the Fury touchy thing. So I think that shows a little bit of Tai, like that the symbolism of him holding onto the doorknobs is him slowly gaining more power or control over his power. I don't know why there were two doors exactly. I don't know what that was all about. And when he was running away, when Kev was running away in real life, he was holding onto his arm, which is where Tai touched him. And yeah, that shows again that something's happening. They're not just running away in fear. Like there's some pain or energy that's being taken. So there's like a real physical effect, not just a mental effect to Tai's version of the touchy powers.
Yeah, there has to be, because a drug dealer who found his drugs again and knows that this person has them is not just going to run away just because he saw something scary. So there has to be that physical pain, that physical draining, right? Because in the comics, doesn't his power drain people?
Yeah, exactly. So that and it leaves them cold and numb, and that's also exactly how I saw the actor playing it, like kind of cold and numb.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that was an awesome scene to see Tai like finally take control of his power, and we saw that it worked for him. He got to keep the backpack, and Kev ran, and Kev got to keep his life at least. I'm sure we'll see him again, but that was a creepy scene. Like those Nightmare and the Hope scenes are so well shot that it just really kind of draws you in there. And maybe there was two doors because Kev came into the Nightmare in one door and Tai came in from the other. So
okay, that makes sense.
I was kind of blocking his exit there. But yeah, I didn't really notice that with the touching. So that's where Tai touched him in the Nightmare, and then he felt that. In reality. Awesome. Yeah, that was a really cool scene. So Tai ends up winning by taking Tandy's advice and using his powers. Then we go back to another scene with Evita and her aunt. Did you want to say something?
No. That might be like something for the future. Sorry, that creature could be something. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
Right, well, we'll come back to it, and I'll give you 10 points if that creature comes back in any other episode.
Okay.
So we go back to Evita and her aunt, and Aunt Clarice is saying there's no stopping the future. We try to predict it, and we try to see it from the cards, but it's coming. There's something coming. It's imminent. There's something building up, and only the divine pairing can save the city. So then we get that further confirmation that there is that divine pairing, and they have been throughout the history of New Orleans, and they're the ones responsible for saving the city. Now, how the divine pairing gets picked and how that power gets passed on, or when it gets passed on, we don't know, but we know that one of them for sure is Tai, and that Evita and her aunt know that, and we know that Tandy is the other, but they don't know that yet.
Yeah.
So then we pan back into Tai, and he's going to see Dwayne, and he gives him the backpack. And, at first Dwayne kind of writes him off, like, I don't have time to deal with you right now. I've got this problem. And then he gives him the backpack. And he says, I want to work for you. I want a job. I want to do what you really do. And, at that point, Dwayne's like, okay, if you want to see what we really do, I'm going to take you for a ride, and I'm going to show you around and show you what's what I'm doing. And then we'll talk from there. So, Tai ended up with his con working. He gets taken on a ride with Dwayne to kind of show him around.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because Tai's trying to run a con. I don't know if he was doing this on purpose, but he sort of let Dwayne hang himself, because whenever Dwayne would say something, he wouldn't say anything back really. Mm-hmm. Dwayne would be like, you know what I do, right? And Ty's like, and then Dwayne would be like, okay, so you want to come in and ride? I'll show you, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, Ty didn't say anything. So he's, I don't know if it's on purpose, but he and that's a common thing with con men. Like, you let your mark give you more information. So that was interesting. That was cool.
Yeah, like Ty, like trying to play it hard, you know, like
Yeah.
I want to go back to the ward. I've got this, and Dwayne's like, okay, well, let's see from here. You brought me my drugs back, so I'm happy about that. So then we pan them back over to Mina and Tandy, and they're talking about the blueprints, and we get more of Mina talking about Nathan and how she thinks that, you know, she loves her dad, but Mina really kind of feels like she's more like Nathan Bowen. And we do get that scene where Tandy kind of steps too far and she asks to talk to Mina's dad, and Mina's kind of like, yeah, no, you're not going to be able to talk to him. And I'm not sure if that was, I'm just kind of, that's not the scene yet. So that's not the scene yet where Mina reveals, hey, I know you're Tandy Bowen. But that's really where we can see that Tandy is stepping too far. Is this the scene where she decided not to use her powers?
Yes.
Okay.
When they saw the bee.
Elaborate more on that for me.
Yeah. Well, this is the part where they're starting to talk to each other, and Tandy's like asking about Nathan Bowen. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. And Mina's like, is that maybe we get the first hint of there's something wrong with Mina's dad, like, because she's like, no, that's not a good idea. You won't be able to talk to him. And then Tandy's like, oh, sorry for prying. And this is when she's like, okay, that's a dead end. I'm just gonna use my power. Mm-hmm. So she starts to inch her hands towards Mina's hand, and then, you know, they're stopped by the bee landing on Tandy's neck, and Mina's like, don't move, you know. And if that was me, I would have moved so fast.
Oh yeah, I would have thought and been like, whoa.
I freaking bee on my neck. And yeah, and we get that nice little image of Mina blowing on the bee to send it off. And I think this was the part where Tandy's reminded of Mina's mission from earlier. Like, she's trying to do something good, and that's when she decides not to use her hopey touchy thing. And yeah, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really catch that right away, and until you pointed that out, I was like, yeah, that was her trying to use her power, and then she decided not to. And I think it was more because, like we were talking about earlier, if this was a normal con where she didn't have the emotional investment,
right,
she would have just used it. She wouldn't have cared. But since this, you know, they had just finished talking about her dad, and Tandy, you can tell she wants to talk about her dad, like saying my dad, Nathan Bowen, but she can't. She's just using it as a guise, like, oh, this guy used to come to teach about science at school and he gave me this rocket.
Yeah.
You know, like trying to like make it seem like it was just somebody that she knew from her childhood randomly. But, you know, obviously she's talking about her dad, and, you know, when she sees that Mina, like you said, is a person trying to do something good. She's trying to help the bees. She's trying to make this work with this energy. She's trying to keep everything safe. And I think that Tandy wasn't expecting that, because that's not, again, it's not a normal con for her. She's not normally conning somebody who she would get emotionally invested in. So to see her not use her powers, I kind of think that, like, if Ty was watching in the background, he would have been really proud of her in that moment for really having some restraint there.
And it's sort of out of character for her at this point. Like, you'd expect, like, exactly what you said, like normal Tandy would like, even last week's Tandy would just would just grab her and use her powers. So we're starting to see some change.
We saw last week Tandy, you know, just using her power wherever she wanted on all of these random people, and now we get that deeper look into who Tandy really is. And like, I was just emotionally invested in Tandy and Mina's relationship, their friendship, because it was such like, it felt so real. You know, Tandy just goes through life in these fake situations, and she doesn't really have anybody, and in this moment she's able to really connect with somebody who has an understanding of her past in a way nobody else has. And you get that sense that, like, these are two smart girls who could really do some amazing things together, and I want their friendship to continue. So I'm super invested in Mina as a character, and if something happens to her, I'm going to be really, really upset.
Oh my God! Don't bring
I'm
up
not going
that.
to talk about
I'm
it
worried
anymore.
about.
Because
I'm worried about some of the characters in the show.
I know. Because especially from what we've seen, I'm like, look at poor Greg. We didn't think that was going to happen to him. But, like, okay, so if there was a choice between Tandy and Greg, like, going after Roxanne, and Tandy and Mina going after Roxanne, then I will take Tandy and Mina. So, like...
Oh, that's true.
I'm over Greg. I'm sad that he didn't last longer, but if anything happens to Mina, I'm going to have a serious problem with the show. We're gonna have a long discussion about that. So we go, we get that Tandy asking, "Can I meet your dad?" And like, you get the feeling that she just went too far in that scene, and you're like, okay, Mina says no, you're not gonna be able to talk to my dad. Then we go back to Detective Connors, and he's meeting with Dwayne, and he brings Detective Riley with, and he's like, wait here, I gotta go talk to my informant. And we're like, yeah, okay, Detective Connors. So he goes in, and he's, I'm sorry, this was the scene where he was on the phone with Dwayne, and he's like, I need to talk to you, there's stuff going on, I need to talk to you later, and we know that O'Reilly's gonna be coming with him. So we have that scene.
Yep.
Then we go to the scene with Ty and Dwayne in the car that's going to mirror the scene that Tandy and Mina had in the swamp when they were talking about how the bees are like the New Orleans of about city rebirth. So now we have this other aspect of New Orleans being the city of destruction and rebirth. So our third really conversation about that topic from Ty and Dwayne, and they're talking, Dwayne's talking about how New Orleans is a city of survivors, and they're back in the ward, they're going through, and he's kind of showing him, I don't know, like his territory or his route or whatever he's really showing him, but the conversation was the same. New Orleans, bad things happens in New Orleans, and bad things happen to the people who live in the ward in New Orleans, but we're survivors, and we push through it, and we do what we have to do to survive and be where we are. So another look at that overarching theme of the episode, that New Orleans is the city of destruction, but also a city of rebirth and survivors.
Survival.
And then Dwayne was getting really deep in this episode, and we have that the conversation about energy, and how energy is running under the city with Tandy and Mina, and how basically this energy, this oil-like substance could kind of explode at any time, but Mina's kind of like holding it at bay. So then we're over with Ty and Dwayne, and they're having a conversation, and Dwayne is saying, when you hold your energy in, and actually maybe this was Ty reiterating something that Father Delgado had said to him, but when you're holding your energy in, it comes out unexpectedly. And Dwayne is saying, when you're holding everything in, it's eventually going to explode. So again, we have that explosion theme throughout the episode.
Yeah, and also it points to Ty, because that's his big problem, is that he holds things in, right? Yeah. So it's a good callback to his character.
Yeah, I really love this scene, because the writers they were so creative in this episode to take that conversation about that theme of New Orleans being the city of destruction and rebirth, and having that in a like mystical voodoo conversation with Evita and her aunt, and then in a science conversation with bees with Tandy and Mina, and then going to a hardened street conversation with Ty riding with his brother's drug dealer friend. Just having that throughout the episode as that common theme in such different ways was really cool. I really like that about this episode. So kudos to the writers for that.
Good job, writers.
Yes. And then we pan back to Tandy and Mina, and everything kind of falls apart on Tandy, and we don't have to call her Liz anymore. So no more intern Liz, because Mina knows. She tells her, you're the right age, you have blonde hair, you're talking about Nathan Bowen, and who would talk about Nathan Bowen? So like you said, Butch, who would like randomly know all this stuff about Nathan Bowen, except for his daughter. So Mina knows that Tandy is Tandy, and we get that out there, and you can see that Mina's not necessarily mad, but I think she was more hurt than anything.
Yeah.
I think that if Tandy would have went to her and said, "I'm Tandy Bowen," they could have had the same experience. I think I think Mina would have been open to talking to her, at least.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's Tandy's lifestyle coming back to bite her in the ass.
Yeah.
Her choices, and you said it perfectly. And the way Ali Maki played it, you definitely did not get the sense that Mina was angry or that she wouldn't talk to Tandy anymore. But she's like, "Why'd you even do this? I don't want you anymore. Go away.
Yeah.
Go away, Liz."
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of sad because like that's the only thing that Tandy knows how to do. Tandy doesn't know how to go and make friends. She doesn't know how to talk to anybody on a really personal level. She runs away from everything. She cons people and runs, and this is completely new to her. And I think in that moment she was realizing that maybe in this situation I didn't have to bring a con to the table. Maybe I could have played this in a way that I could have been my real, genuine self, whoever that is. Tandy probably doesn't even know who that is. And I could have had a conversation with Mina as, my dad and your dad were friends, and I want to talk to you. And I think that that's something just so completely different for her that, maybe that's something that she'll talk about with Ty later, of just like realizing that maybe everything doesn't have to be a con.
Yeah, especially when emotions are involved, because all her conning powers disappeared.
Yeah.
And even Mina was like, "You're a shitty liar."
Yeah.
And she's not, but because of everything that's going on, she's a little bit more obvious here. So maybe she can try something new, which is which was the theme of one of the earlier episodes.
Yeah, that's definitely what Ty told her. Try something different. And I think that she's really starting to realize that there are other ways to do things besides just the con. Tandy got a hold of her powers. She got control of her powers faster than Ty, but there's still so many things that she needs to learn about herself. And I think that's the difference really between them. Ty has more of an insight into himself, but now he has to really, take control of these outside forces with these powers. So it's a cool.
The writing is so good.
I know it really is. It's really, really good. So then we're sad with, kind of like the Mina and Tandy friendship breakup. Even though, like, I got the sense that, like, that was not the last time they were going to interact. I just kind of felt bad for Mina because it's like, she's probably in the same boat as Tandy of, like, not really having too many friends and, like, not really having anybody to talk to about these crazy science things with Roxanne.
Right.
And, here she's like, here's essentially not a peer, but somebody who understands where, how we grew up and, like, where we're coming from. And I'm mad at her because she lied to me.
Right.
So then we pan back over to Evita and Auntie, and Auntie's saying Ty's in danger. This is not good. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and it's coming, and I don't know when it's coming, but Ty is going to be in danger. And then we get the she's saying, I was always afraid of these two cards when my grandma was teaching me how to read the cards. And Evita's like, what are you talking about? And then we get the one will live, one will die comment. And then it really hits home in that scene because we know, obviously, that they're talking about Ty and Tandy. And you're like, how about they both live and we don't deal with this thing?
I know. Stupid cards.
Yes.
Stupid cards.
But then you wonder, like, what the cards were. Like, is she going to be able to predict which one is going to die? Did she know, like, well, she wasn't alive for the other divine pairings, but, like, are they able to see who's going to be the one who has to make the sacrifice? Is that able to know?
Was she not around for the other divine pairings? Because I've been thinking about this. The big storm from 8 years ago, was that supposed to be a catastrophe that another divine pair stopped? Or
Okay,
was that just a natural disaster, like a
but
normal one?
well, maybe you're right. So maybe the previous divine pairing like kind of stopped that from being bigger than what it was, and then the powers got transferred.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. Like in that moment, when the old pair, like one of the old pair died, one is might still be around, and that exact moment is when we get the next divine pair, which is
Yeah.
what happened. So I don't know, maybe not.
Like how does the power get transferred? How do people get chosen? Were Ty and Tandy just chosen because they were in the vicinity?
Right.
Or is
We
it
don't know.
because they have something more to them? Good point.
Hmm.
So I guess wouldn't it be interesting if like we got a scene with somebody who used to be part of the pair
Yeah.
and we get to find out like, I'm the person who lived?
Exactly. So that's the interesting thing. We're so far based on all the dolls, we're thinking, oh, this happened whatever generations ago, but we could have one person like be a living sort of witness or a survivor of what happened, and
Yeah.
that'll be interesting. Maybe not even this season, could be later on, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting if that's even possible.
And I like these little interspersals of the voodoo and the mysticism and like that behind the powers, because it's like they're not giving too much away, but they're giving us just what we need to know. So we know Ty's one of them. We know that this has happened before, and that the divine pairing are the people who saved the city, and that we know that it's going to happen again, and one of them is going to die. So we know, like, we kind of know what we need to know, but we don't know more than that. There's still more for us to like be excited about learning. Like, how did they get their powers, and is one really going to die? So we still have that overarching, those little scenes was just enough to remind us that we still have those questions, and that maybe we'll get some answers in the next episode.
Better.
Yeah. So then we pan back to Ty and Dwayne, and this is when we really get emotional with Ty and Dwayne, and Dwayne slips to not to Billy. Dwayne slips to Ty that he was there when Billy was shot. So he's like, when you jumped in the river to save your brother, to try to save your brother.
Yeah.
And Ty's like, whoa, like I know you know, but now I know how you know, which is something that we questioned on our episode last week. How did Dwayne know about this? So he saw he was there, and then you get that whole picture of, okay, Billy was shot by Detective Connors, and Ty was not the only person who saw this happen. So Billy saw it happen. Connors is covering it up, but he knows that, maybe he didn't care about Billy, the police officer. I'm sorry, Ty took care of little Ty, who's going to believe a little kid, but we know that Dwayne was there as well. So how did that kind of keep quiet? Well, they entered into a drug business together, and they became partners. That Detective Connors was going to help Dwayne kind of be not the kingpin of everything, not the overall leader, but a really high up in this drug deal, and make him successful. So basically he paid him off. And Ty was rightfully angry about that. He's like, you're killing Billy every day that you live this lie. My parents thought I was crazy. He finds and it's a sad parallel if you look at Tandy, and she had this conversation with Mina, and Mina saying, I don't think that Nathan Bowen was at fault. So you have that, like, Tandy has that one person who believes her. And then you look at Ty, and he has Dwayne, and Dwayne is the one person who knows, who can be on Ty's side. But look what he did with it. He became a drug dealer, kingpin guy, just to make money. And Ty was, like, rightfully disappointed, and let him know that he was disappointed. Like, you're working with the cop who killed my brother, and everybody thinks I'm crazy, and no one wants to believe me that he was actually shot and killed by this cop, and now you're basically using this guy to build your business. Like, basically saying to him that that's bullshit, that you're doing this. And Billy would be really, really disappointed in you. And so they have that really deep conversation, and I was really feeling it for Ty, but I was glad that Ty pushed him, because Dwayne might be somebody that you would be afraid to kind of push, to make angry, but Ty was like, no, I'm going to talk to you straight about how you are doing my brother wrong every single day. You know, you're not you're not doing his memory well by being this bad guy off of his death. But then we kind of get that, we have to pause in that scene because then Connor shows up. And
right.
Dwayne tells Ty to go, and we both know that Ty is not going to go anywhere. Ty's going to go around the corner and hide and watch what's going on. So, you know, we're kind of left in that scene, but that scene really struck me just because, you know, Ty finally has somebody who believes in him, and he's really just, he's not a good guy, and I felt bad for Ty in that moment.
Yeah. First of all, like, props to you for, I think you specifically pointed out last week that like Dwayne could have been a witness, a direct witness to the murder of Billy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, when Dwayne said that, I thought of you. I'm like, oh, she was right, like 100%. And that's the reason why everything, and it all makes sense now from knowing that, like he was just in the, I don't know, like creeping in the shadows somewhere.
Right.
And exactly what the stuff you said about, I did not pick up on that, but you're so right. Like Dwayne, as weird as it is, he's the guy who knows that Tyrone is telling the truth. And I'm just repeating what you're saying, but yeah, Tyrone is living with this guilt and living with, I don't know, the pain of his parents not fully trusting him, and of all the people to find out that that's a person who not just believes in him but knows the truth.
Yeah.
It's Dwayne, the drug dealer, the mogul Dwayne, and I think that does go a long way towards establishing, I don't know, like this. I mean, we got a lot of the bonding between Tandy and Mina, and that does go a long way towards, for me, for establishing the bond that Tyrone and Dwayne are forming. And Aubrey's acting here, I think, like his superpower of acting for me would be his honesty.
Yes.
I think that, like, that genuine feeling that, and I kind of pick up on it when I watch interviews of Aubrey in real life, that Aubrey seems to be like this really good person, and maybe that's why they picked him for this role, because I think it shines through so well. Mm-hmm. That when like knowing, like what you said, like he's pushing this supposedly this hard criminal, he's pushing him, and even knowing everything that Dwayne is up to, Tyrone still says, or that Dwayne did, I'm sorry, that Dwayne's been doing for years, that killing Billy every day. Tyrone's still like, you can still fix this. You can go to the police right now. Like, that's his brain. That's how he's thinking.
Yeah.
Even though Dwayne's rightfully like, no, if I do that, nobody would ever do that, because right. I'll die. I'll be killed. But Tyrone doesn't get that, and that's so heartbreaking. And it's a lot of that is on Aubrey Joseph's acting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he just stays so calm. He doesn't, in that situation, he would have a right to be angry, and he gets his anger across, but he's not yelling at Dwayne. And I think that having that, like, being able to hold that back and really being able to articulate what he wants to say to Dwayne got Dwayne. You know, I think that he was able to reach in there and, like, tug at the heartstrings in a way that if he just started yelling at him and getting mad and trying to fight him, he wouldn't have got his point across. So it was perfectly acted. I agree.
Right.
For sure. So then we go back to a scene. You know, we're left with Connor showing up with Detective Riley in the car, and we know that Ty is hiding in the shadows. Then we pan back to Mina, and she's going to see her dad, and we see why she was making those cookies. So she wanted to bring her dad cookies for her visit. And, you know, we see that her dad is in this catatonic state, and he's kind of just humming. but he's not speaking. We're not really sure why he's like this. We're not sure what happened to lead up to the situation. But she's visiting, and then all of a sudden Tandy shows up, and Mina's like, "What are you doing here? You liar, liar pants!" And Tandy's like, she kind of scolds Tandy, and Tandy says like, the truth doesn't occur to me to tell the truth. All I ever do is lie. And I think that was her way of apologizing. And she wants answers about her dad, and she wants to know what happened, and she asks Mina if she can talk to her dad, and Mina's like, sure, he's not going to be able to talk to you, whatever, if you want to talk to him, fine. So then of course we know that Tandy's going to use her hope power on him. And I loved this scene because it shows you that there are limitations to their power. So Mr. Hess is in this catatonic state, so Tandy's entering into his mind, and she comes across this door that's locked, and she can't unlock it. And she can't, because look at the state he's in. There's something not right with his mind, where she's not able to get past this barrier, and he's not able to get past the barrier either to talk to people. So I love how she wasn't just able to like jump into his thoughts. I love the way they did that.
Yeah, that's good, because like we said in before, that kind of power is not fair, or it's tough to write that, because you're always going to wonder, why can't she just touch that person and figure out the whole plot? So it's we're getting limits that, okay, so there are circumstances where it just won't work.
Yeah. So that was a really cool thing, and she sees that she can't do this, and then she kind of looks at Mina, and Mina's like kind of still hopeless, like I can't get to my dad, I miss him. And Tandy kind of says, I think I know somebody who can help. And that's when you're like, yes, Ty definitely needs to get in on this with you guys, and we need to tag team up finally.
Finally.
And skipping forward to the preview for next episode, where you can see them both using their powers at the same time on Ivan Hess, like, how cool. I can't wait for that episode to see how that plays out. That's going to be awesome. Like, we've been thinking, 7 episodes in, we're going to see them use their powers together.
We're going to see them go towards a place together. Just that.
Yes, I'm very happy with that. So then, leading up to our final scenes here, we go back to Ty watching Connors and Dwayne, and Detective Connors left O'Reilly in the car, and he's telling Dwayne, you gotta kill this cop. She's getting too close. She's really like digging deep, and I need you to take care of it. And you see Ty in the background, like trying to call Detective O'Reilly to warn her. I don't know if he knew she was in the car. Well, obviously he did, because they were talking like, I have her out in the car, and when she comes in, I want you to shoot her. So he's trying to warn her, don't come in here. She doesn't answer him. She's like, whatever, this kid's calling me, I'm gonna blow it off. And Dwayne's like, okay, I've never killed anybody before, but I have to survive. So then you're back into that survival theme of the show. Except that when O'Reilly comes in, she has her gun drawn like right away, and she just shoots Dwayne right away. So I guess I was kind of confused about how that scene went down. Like, how did she know to shoot him? Because
go ahead.
Like, she thought that this was just Connor's informant. So like, she came in, guns drawn, I'm gonna shoot him. Unless she knew that Ty was trying to warn her, or maybe he texted her.
That was so funny.
I don't know.
Fast fingers, if you can do that.
Right.
So I was actually going to ask you what you thought of that, because so it's 3 things for me. Number 1, we just got Dwayne saying earlier that he's not comfortable with guns, so he's not used to guns.
Yeah.
So that kind of explains why he's slow on the draw. Number 2, obviously, Detective O'Reilly is a badass, so she can whip that thing out really fast. And 3, Connors actually shouts a warning to her as she comes in. or not I don't know if it was a warning, but he goes, I think he says like O'Reilly or something like that.
Well, I think he needed to cover himself, right? So like he
yeah,
had
exactly.
to play like, yeah, I am on your side, but I don't think that he accounted for Dwayne not taking the shot. So okay, if he said he wasn't comfortable with guns, then that makes sense why he didn't draw right away. But she came in and she shot him like not even looking at him. Like she literally came in the door, saw this guy, and shot him.
Super fast reflexes.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Why? And I'd like you to. I want to get your thought on this. So if Dwayne shot O'Reilly, that removes the O'Reilly problem from Connors, right? From Connors' life. But the fact that O'Reilly shot Dwayne, does that benefit Connors in any way? Like, because I think the fact that she shot him, maybe that'll prevent O'Reilly from pursuing it any further. Maybe she'll be like, "Oh, I got the guy."
Yeah.
And the fact, and you said you picked up on it. Connors shouted out her name, and that might have been his way of covering his butt if there were any questions about it. So in my head, I'm like, either way, he wins. So maybe he was just like he's just so smart that no matter what would have happened, it would have worked out for him.
Or for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
or if they shot each other,
O'Reilly dies and everything's cool because he'll be able to continue on without being pestered. Or in this situation, Dwayne dies, and now O'Reilly is like, she's stuck in it, right? So they're kind of like in a parallel situation. So they're bringing that back of Connor shot this young black guy for nothing and killed him. And now O'Reilly comes in the room, doesn't even like really like, she couldn't have assessed the situation in that quick of a time. She basically,
yes.
You know, he shouted a warning, but she didn't really know what was going on. She drew her gun at the other guy in the room, who knows who he could have been, and shot him. So just like Connors did 8 years ago, she shot this, you know, young black guy with really no reason to, except that he's walking into this room and he says her name. And I don't know, I'll have to watch the scene again if he was shouting at her in warning or if he just was doing that to spook her. Because like you said, it's win-win for him either way. So now like, what's gonna happen now? Does she carry the secret? Does he help her like cover this up? Because she's gonna get in trouble for, I mean, I don't know.
Right.
He could turn on her and say she just shot him for nothing. Exactly. I didn't say anything. You know, she just came in and shot him. And now I lost my performance.
Spin that. Yeah.
Yeah, so like he has her completely wrapped around his finger now. And he lost Dwayne, but you know, if Ty had not have been there and heard that whole conversation, Connors would have been in the perfect position. He would have been able to kick back and been like, I got this cop wrapped around my finger. I can make her do whatever I want because I know what she did. So again, they can go on and like kind of cover up the fact that she shot him and then she owes him, or he can use it to blackmail her. You know, there's so many different plot lines there. The problem with Connors, again, is Ty. So 8 years later, Ty again was there and saw the whole thing, and Ty revealed his location because, you know, he saw his friend get shot, and and no matter his feelings for his feelings for Dwayne and the situation with Billy, like that was still a childhood friend of his. So he was obviously overtaken with emotion, and then he runs. O'Connors is following after him. He's trying to use his power to get away, but it's not working right away. Like he kind of had to like jumpstart his power.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, and I think that like maybe in that moment he was so emotionally confused he didn't know where to go, and he didn't have like that guiding force helping him. But then he knew like when he disappeared and ended up in the church, I think that was something inside of him like, I need to go to Tandy. I need to go to my other half in the crazy powers we have, and I need to just be there. And so he ends up in the church, and that scene really got me. That was such an emotional scene. Aubrey acted so well with
No.
the way, like, how upset he was. And then you saw poor Tandy, like, she had been mean to him in previous episodes, and you know, she wasn't really Ty's biggest fan, but you can see in that moment that she was so worried about him. And that scene where she kind of just tries to hug him and they can't. That got
Yeah.
Did you feel the feels in that scene?
Got us all, man.
Yeah. That, like, it's just so well acted between both of them, between Aubrey being
Both of them.
upset, like, you know, he's really letting himself feel, I had one person in the world who would believe me, and for good or bad, he at least knew the truth, and now he's dead. And he's kind of gotta, like, let that all out.
Right. And you picked up on Tandy being not as mean to him as before, and I think it's also his influence on her. Like, and we got that. That's her whole thing throughout this whole episode. She's changing, and I think a large part of it is because of Ty. And now we see like in the past, maybe she wouldn't have like come over and hug him even, or her guard would have been up.
Yeah.
But here, her instinct is to touch him at least, and then, oof, you know, the little effect goes, and we are, oh man, these guys can't even touch, and not even for all the, you know, the shippers who want them to kiss and all that, just to hug somebody who's starting to cry, and yeah, the acting of that, and with so much emotion from Aubrey. I'm sorry, from Ty. You know, we just established how the way that Dwayne could be important to him, not just being the friend that he knew since he was a kid, but also the fact that he's the one person who can believe in him, and, you know, connection to Billy and all that.
Yeah.
And there was something about Dwayne when they left, when they parted ways in the prior scene, like, maybe you got the sense that, or I got the sense that maybe he'll help Ty out, you know, like, so there's that you feel bad because, oh, maybe this guy would have done something, and now he's gone, and Ty felt that, and we get that crazy scene at the end, and all the feels, and man, so good. And
you know what's funny too, and I forgot to mention it earlier, but like when we were first introduced to Dwayne in this episode, he was with that girl in his bedroom.
Oh, right.
And you got, like, they set that up in a way where you were like, is that Tandy and Ty? And then you kind of like pan out, and I knew it wasn't them, but I was like, who is this? And then when they panned out to him at the factory, I'm like, oh, okay, it's Dwayne. And, you know, they show the girl, and she's got like the white hair, and she's got like the white outfit, and Dwayne's in black, and you're like, ooh, that was clever how they set that up. But then you go look at the end of the episode, and you're like, here's Ty and Tandy for real, and Tandy just wants to comfort somebody who's in a bad place, and they can't even touch each other. So it's kind of like that juxtaposition there between, you know,
Ooh.
that
nice.
made it more so for me, because it was kind of like they set it up like, oh, maybe they'll kind of like get closer in this episode because they did this little trickery, and then at the end they're like, yeah, no, they can't even touch each other.
That's good. And now I feel sad for that scene that was supposed to be funny. Thanks.
Sorry.
Because, yeah, it's true. Oh man, so much good writing.
It really
so much
is.
Good writing.
This episode was really good, and we just got so much more insight into who Ty and Tandy are as people, especially Tandy. Like, she doesn't let that side of herself show, and now she finally has somebody who maybe she can relate to on a personal level as a friend and not just a con. But that'll, you know, what we saw from next week's episode, I'm so excited to see them finally using their powers together. And I think we're going to get a lot of answers about Roxanne next week from that preview that we saw.
Yeah, it's just so good to finally see Cloak and Dagger on a mission.
Yes, together.
And it took 7 episodes, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna get there. Like, I'm trying to think if they could swerve us in any way. No, I think we're gonna get there, and we're gonna get some more clarification about what I think we're gonna see exactly what happened during that night 8 years ago with Nathan, and more importantly with me, Ivan Hess. There you go. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be fun. And just this episode, just again bringing it back to what you said about Dwayne earlier. I feel like the title being Funhouse Mirrors is shows that this is like, I don't know if like their best selves would be the right term, but we saw the life that Tandy could have lived in a way. I
Yeah.
think Mina was sort of her hope dream, and for Tyrone, Dwayne was maybe his fear dream. Like Tyrone could have ended up a crime boss, maybe, who knows, like with
Yeah.
their economic situation in the past, and he was lucky to get out of that. So this is their best and worst selves, and they saw that with both with their storylines and their experiences, and it just adds that much more layer of characterization and development. And hopefully we're done with that, and we start, I mean, done with the character heavy stuff, and
Yeah.
starting next week we get the plot kicking, because we only have 4 more, and we still have a lot of the voodoo stuff to cover.
Yeah.
Like you said, the mysticism aspect and the supposed catastrophe that's coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good to get things going over here, but at the same time remembering that this is Cloak and Dagger, and we're finding out exactly who Cloak and Dagger are
Yeah.
through even if we're looking at reflections of other things that they could have been.
Ooh, I couldn't have said that any better myself. I got to give you props on bringing that title so involved into that episode. But
I know.
yeah, looking really forward to next week. We've been talking for a long time, so we're gonna let you guys go. We're gonna wrap up here. But
Yeah.
thank you guys as always for following us on social media and for interacting with us on social media. Again, tweet at us anytime you have any comments or anything that you want us to discuss on the show. So our Twitter handles are in the show notes, so again, be sure to check us out. And we again want to give a special shout out to The Collective, who is an awesome group of podcasts and information about maybe lesser known comic books. So check out # The Collective on Twitter and check out the shows and information given by the people who are involved in The Collective. So awesome group. So shout out again to them. But I think I'm going to be throwing another poll out for you guys on Twitter. So Butch and I discussed this earlier. I think we're going to go round 2 on supporting characters and get the parents involved here as to who you guys want to see more of. And maybe I'll throw, Father Delgado back in that poll again, because we went another episode without
Right.
Father Delgado.
3 episodes.
We got mention of him in passing, but yeah, we'll see. And I don't know if we'll see him again next week, but here's to hoping we learn some more about Father Delgado. But again, thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for
Hey, guys.
listening to this week's episode. Make sure you check out the show's description down below so you can follow us on social media. Talk to you next time.